in Kabul, Afghanistan, and Afghanistan is a country that produces much of the world's opium, and of course, opium is the base product that then is transformed into heroin. And Afghanistan is also a country where people have been traumatized, as we know, by decades of war and violence and just general life. And so in Kabul, it turns out there are a lot of people who turn towards drugs as a way to escape from a lot of those challenges of life. And there's this place that I've read about, a bridge, where people kind of are just sitting down under the bridge and caught in drug addiction, and they're shooting up down there. And this bridge has, strangely enough, become this kind of attraction to the people of the city of Kabul. They'll walk over the bridge and just look down and watch what's going on, kind of gawk at it. One reporter from the New York Times went there and studied this a little bit, and he talked to some people who were watching and gawking from the bridge, and one of them said, "Why do people live like this?" And another said, "They're destroying themselves right in front of us." And another said, "It's embarrassing to see that the government is doing nothing to help all these hopeless people. I wonder how government officials sleep at night, not even thinking of the pain that their fellow countrymen are going through." And so people look down, they're seeing the edge, and they're just looking off the bridge and seeing the very edge, the margins of human society. And regardless of whose fault it is, and I am not interested in judging the ones who use drugs or who watch them doing it or the government or whatever. I mean, I know it's messy. I'm not sure what I would do if I walked by it, but it's an image of people in extreme suffering, and we find ourselves so often in situations where we look off the bridge and we see the edge. We see the margin. We are looking down off the bridge and we face that moment of, what should I do? Do I get involved? Do I go to them? Do I keep my distance? And suffering is always at the margins, and it's not easy to go to those marginal places. And Jesus is talking about his coming death and his resurrection, his coming suffering and death in the Gospel of John, this passage we just read. And he says in 12:26, "Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, there will my servant be also. My Father will honor the one who serves me." And the long and the short of it is that if we're going to follow Jesus, then we're going to have to be ready to go to the places that Jesus went to. Brothers and sisters, hear this. Jesus challenges us to go with him to the edge. Jesus challenges us to go to the places where he is at. And we see him make this challenge in the Gospel of John. He's calling his disciples and he's calling us to go to the margins. He tells us that there are some Greeks in John that wanted to see Jesus. And even before Jesus' death and resurrection, we see his inherent charisma, the way that the Holy Spirit is pouring out of him and attracting people to his mission and to God's love. And it's not just Jews, but it's also Gentile Greeks. And Jesus says in John chapter 10, he says, "I've got other sheep. They know my voice. I'm going to go to them. I'm going to gather them into one big flock." And I think part of what he's getting at is that there are other people besides the Jewish nation who will hear my call and respond and be gathered into this flock. And here they come to him in John chapter 12, and they say, "Sir," talking to Philip, "Sir, we want to see Jesus." And so Philip goes and he talks to Andrew, and then Andrew and Philip, they go and they talk to Jesus. And Jesus in this passage predicts that his ministry on earth is nearing an end. It's at a critical juncture. He's going to die. He's going to be buried. He will be like that kernel of wheat that drops into the earth, and then its death, its transformation gives life to the whole world. And Jesus is walking the way of the cross, and anyone who is going to follow him is going to have to do the same. He says, "Whoever loves his life will lose it, while the one who hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life." But it's not easy. Verse 27, Jesus says, "Now my heart is troubled, but what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour. No, it was for this reason I came to this hour. Father, glorify your name." And then there's this thunderous voice from heaven, the voice of the Father that says, "I have glorified it, and I will glorify it again." Jesus will be lifted up on the cross, and his death will be the defeat and the driving out of the devil, the prince of the world. But Jesus' death will also draw the entire world to him for salvation. And just as those Greeks have come to see him now, so all people will have that ability, that capacity, that longing, that draw to come and know Jesus and him crucified. So the question is, are we willing to walk with Jesus on the way with him? Are we willing to be a part of this people that Jesus draws to himself on the cross? Because God glorifies his name on the cross. And God shows his true love for us on the cross. And God saves the world on the cross. Are we willing to accept it and to follow Jesus into the truth and the life of his mission and identity? Or do we turn away? And you know, during this season of Lent, we have been looking at all of the ways that we turn. And we turn from sin and turn towards God, and we turn towards the way of the cross, and we turn towards belief. And what this all means is that our lives are reoriented, and that our perception of other people is reoriented, that we turn, and we turn towards God, and we turn towards the margins. Jesus is saying, where I am, there will my servant be. And he's at the margins, and you know, it's not easy to turn to the margins and to do it well. Because I think our natural human response is to turn away from human pain and suffering, away from weakness, away from places of brokenness. It is not easy to look at someone who is dying or shooting up or ruining their life. And it's true that we want to remain innocent of evil, but we don't want to be ignorant. We want to be wise. I mean, we don't want to go running to gawk at evil. For instance, I have never watched, and I will not watch, those videos that Islamic terrorists have been putting out online where they do terrible things. It's enough for me to know what they've done. I don't need to see it myself, because we cannot unsee certain things. We cannot unwatch videos. We don't want to run to evil. I mean, that's not what Jesus is talking about. What he's saying is that where he is, there we will naturally find his servants. Where Jesus is at, that's where his people are going to be. And listen, Jesus goes to some pretty extreme places. He insists on being at work in tiny towns that don't seem to have that much going for them. And he insists on being present in the middle of the urban jungle where the things are falling apart and violence cracks through society like sun-baked cement. Are we willing to go to those places where Jesus is? Because that is his challenge to us, to follow him all the way to the margins. That is where he is always at the margins. And what are the margins? I mean, the margins of what? And first off, I think it's the margins of the kingdom of God. It's where the kingdom is extending, rolling into new places, where Jesus is bringing people into salvific relationship with him. That is where he is. That's where he's at work. And it's no wonder that often you talk to missionaries in some of the most challenging places, and those are the spots where God's power is most evident, and there are miraculous encounters with the power of God, because they're on the front lines, and that's where Jesus is very deeply present. But you know, the margins are not just someplace out there. You can't just kind of draw the margins on a map. I mean, look at our own lives. Look at our own hearts. There are these shadowy places where we are not really ready to go. I mean, there are things in our hearts that we are not ready to confront. I mean, it's the usual suspects of unforgiveness and our own duplicity and sometimes our own cowardice. I mean, we get into the habit of leaving sleeping dogs lie, right? Stay back. But no. We've got to learn to go to the margins of our own hearts, which is part of the discipline of confession. That's what confession teaches us. It's part of what happens when we speak honestly about what's really going on inside of us in our sin. And silence and solitude and fasting, they're really, any of the disciplines of abstinence support this work of speaking truthfully about what we find in our hearts. I mean, who are we when all of the scaffolding of our nice life are pulled back? What is in those marginal places of our own parts, of our own hearts? What's on the edge? Not that Jesus is calling us to constant unsettledness. I think that we must contemplate and cultivate composure of heart. But composure is not the same thing as comfort. We cannot stay in places of comfort. We have to be constantly crossing the tracks and pushing the envelope and getting down off that bridge. And our constant question has to be, where is the edge? Where are the margins? Where's the edge in our community? Where is the edge in our neighborhoods? Where is the edge in our families? Those are the places that Jesus is already present and at work, because those are places of brokenness and hurt. And so go there. And Jesus said, whoever serves me must follow me, and where my servant is, there will I also be. Are we willing to go where Jesus goes? Are we willing to turn toward the margins? Because you know what? Margins are pretty tough places, and our usual response is to step back from the edge. At least that's what I do. Because you never know what is going to happen at the edge. Not long ago, we visited a place that was overlooking the Missouri River, and there was this, it's late winter, early spring, the massive flow of water coming down the Missouri, ice chunks and mud flowing downstream. And you see this sign right by this little ledge that says, "Be careful, do not approach the edge." But the sign is already on the edge, right? It's already like about ready to go on down the edge itself. And you get closer and you kind of look from the side and you see, this is the reason you don't go close to the edge. This is already all caved in. The mud that was supposed to be beyond this sign, it's gone. It's down in the water. It's fallen into the river. The edge is a risky place, right? It's where things can fall away and cave in suddenly. It's where our convictions are tested. It's where the ground gets shaky. And the word that we use a lot of times for that place where we dwell, that place that is far from the edge or the boundaries for us, that's our comfort zone. Have you ever heard that before? We talk about our comfort zone. And look, we've all got a comfort zone. We have people that we like to hang around with. We have places that we know and that we go to, activities that we're a part of, things that we like to eat. And that's our comfort zone. We breathe easy in our comfort zone. And that's just normal. That's just part of human life. There's nothing wrong with the fact that we have a comfort zone. But Jesus is challenging us to go where he is, to step outside those edges, the boundaries of our comfort zone, and to go where he is. And it's not just that Jesus is a glutton for punishment, but that this is just part of the package of walking the Jesus way. If we're going to follow him, then we've got to go and follow him. And there can be no hemming and hawing. Let me first go and bury my father. Let me go and say goodbye. Let me whatever. We got to follow. And we've got to get a very clear view of what our commitment to him means. And it's going to mean walking down along the edges. It's going to mean getting off the bridge. And you know this is true, right? That when we're comfortable, it's easy to say we like Jesus, we admire Jesus, we're curious about Jesus, that he's great. Jesus is all right with us. But when you go to the edge, that is when you are tested. That is where you're going to really see what you believe. So where's your edge? Are you willing to go there? Are you willing to step outside of your comfort zone? And you see Jesus calling people beyond themselves all the time. That is his MO. That is what he does. He calls people beyond their comfort zone. He looks at where people are at, and he says to them, "Come with me. Follow me. Get up, get moving. You're coming on the road with me. Get out of your comfort zone and walk." Peter was on the boat, and Jesus says, "Yeah, come walking to me on that water. Yeah, there's waves. Come on out. It's dangerous." Zacchaeus is up in the sycamore tree just trying to spot Jesus and keep him at a safe distance. Jesus says, "Get down here because I am going to your house today." Think of Nicodemus from last week, the scripture we read in John chapter 3. He meets Jesus in the garden at night, and no one will see him there. He can kind of keep Jesus in a safe place and ask his questions. Jesus says, Nicodemus, you have to be born again. Jesus calls people beyond themselves. He calls people beyond their comfort zones. And our comfort zone is going to be different for all of us. My comfort zone is pretty small, and so pretty much anything beyond my garden is beyond my comfort zone. It would be really easy for me to curl up with a computer and a big stack of books and just kind of live my life right there. But I can't do that because I feel Jesus tugging me out beyond myself, and so I know I've got to go, and that's where the most interesting life happens anyway, is on the road with Jesus. But our comfort zones are all going to be different, and so Jesus is going to meet us in different places and call us onto the road with him, call us to those edges. Back when I was in seminary, I got this idea. My idea was this. Let me tell you the background. I had spotted that at the Elkhart County Jail that on Sunday afternoons, people were going to visit their relatives, and it takes a long time to go in and have FaceTime with your relative behind the glass. And so there was like a line of people. They're all over the block. They're sitting around. They're talking. They're waiting to meet their relatives. And I got this idea. I said to myself, I'll make lemonade. And I will take my lemonade to these lines of people, and I'll just give them lemonade as a sign of hospitality, and we'll talk about faith. That was my idea. And I tried to rope a friend into this, and he came along once, but it's kind of challenging. And I did it a couple of times myself, and I did it. I said, would you like some lemonade? And then we talk about life and faith. And I'd invite him to church, right? I mean, this is kind of crazy, but I was in seminary. And I met this mother whose son had done something terrible, and so I started visiting that young man inside the jail, and I had no training, no supervision. No one was telling me what to do or say. I just went. I can still hardly believe that I did this. It was kind of one of those things that God just tells you to get up and do it, and so you go, and you don't really know what you're doing. You just got to go, and I was way outside of my comfort zone, let me tell you. But I mean, Jesus was there, and he wanted me to come with him. He's like, hey, where I'm at, that's where you're going to be. And Jesus challenges us to go where he is. What are the boundaries of your comfort zone? Where is Jesus challenging you to go? And listen, we've got to be intelligent about this. I was not very intelligent in my jail visiting. I should have sought some supervision and guidance and accountability. Could have gotten myself into trouble. I'm sure that most of the time I was in way over my head. We've got to be careful with this because going to the edge is not swooping in and fixing people's messy lives. That's impossible. It cannot be done. People make decisions over the whole course of their lives, and we do not have the capacity or the right to drop in and try to straighten them out. We can't just come into people's lives and say, hey, stay away from drinking the pop and eat more kale and don't drink, don't smoke, say no to drugs. I mean, people's lives get messy. And we can think, if they just had some more money, that would fix everything. And a lot of times that's what people themselves think. But the reality is that all of the problems that we face have a deep spiritual component. And unless people are really willing to honestly look at their own hearts and address those issues and lay their lives open to God's love and care, then there is not much hope that we can help them. We're just not strong enough. And even if we were strong enough, sometimes it wouldn't be the right thing to do because we would be harming their free choice. People have to live their lives. And what Jesus is calling us to is something a little bit more subtle. It's not for us to be fix-it people. Now, we are called to challenge structures of abuse and violence and injustice. We are called to work for change and to sometimes to be the thorn in other people's sides. I mean, this is Why God said through the prophet Isaiah in chapter 58, "Is not this the fast that I choose? To loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke. Is it not to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to cover them, and not to hide yourself from your own kin. Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up quickly." We have to be present at the margins, at the places of brokenness. We do not have the right. We cannot just throw up our hands and use our privilege and our money and our jobs and our geography to just kind of wall ourselves off from people at the edge. We're called to go to the edge, to walk to the margins, to follow Jesus down off that bridge and be where people are. We're called to reach out to the margins. And you know, God has always been a God of the margins. He's the God who's concerned for the widow and the orphan and the immigrant. He gives justice to the weak and the orphan, maintains the right of the lowly and the destitute. He picks the littlest shepherd as the king of all Israel, a hopeless baby born to slaves floating in a basket on the Nile is the one that he chooses to save his people from out of slavery. God's a God of the margins. And I think God is always calling us to be a church of the margins, a church that is on the margins, the kind of church that weeps with refugees who are showing up at our borders and is brokenhearted about drug addiction and does not turn aside from the slow motion violence of poverty and bleeds with people caught in abuse and violence and neglect. Bob Ekblad, a Presbyterian minister and the founder with his wife of the Tierra Nueva community in Skagit County, Washington, tells of walking with people on the margins. And Tierra Nueva means new earth. It is a community that is dedicated to connecting with migrant workers, with folks in prison, with addicts and others that are on the edge. And they practice this radical blend of charismatic faith healing and social justice, and they're deeply committed to studying the Bible together. And on one occasion, Pastor Ekblad met a man named Zach in prison, and Zach had the marks of heroin addiction on his hand. And Pastor Ekblad said to him, "Zach, I think that God wants to heal your hands." And over their continued meetings, his hands were healed, and he turned his life over to Christ. And when Zach got out of jail, he showed up at the door of the Tierra Nueva community wanting not to be helped, but to help. And there he learned to roast coffee as part of this underground coffee project they've got where they roast coffee and sell coffee. They are walking the risky way of the margins at Tierra Nueva. Brothers and sisters, Lent is a time of renewing our commitment to walk in the ways of the Lord, and the Lord Jesus is inevitably walking along ways that lead to the margins. And we've got to realize that walking on the margins is to walk to a place where we do not have control, where we will not always know what is going on, where our sense of the right thing to do will be put in jeopardy and challenged. Walking on the margins is really a spiritual journey, because we'll be walking somewhere beyond ourselves, somewhere beyond our comfort zones, which is thus naturally a place beyond our imagination. Writer Ananda Rose Robinson puts it this way: if there's one thing that most people agree on, it's that Jesus had a knack for the unexpected. To imagine what Jesus might do is, perhaps, to travel to the edge of knowledge. Jesus is challenging us to walk with him to the margins. Brothers and sisters, are we willing to get down off the bridge and follow him? Amen.